Hey, everybody, welcome to the Jim Masters Show Live Entertainment Lifestyle Talk Show series. How's everybody doing today? It's good to see you. Special episode, a little earlier than our usual time. Right now it's 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. We have a very special guest. Yes, live and direct from New York City, although she literally just seconds ago jumped off an Amtrak train from Washington, D.C. Ambassador Sujay is here. Yes, we're very excited and honored to have her here to talk about her prolific career. She's also known as and has been dubbed America's Queen of Inspiration. And we can definitely use not just a little, but a lot of that around here these days, right? You know, we talk a lot about inspiration and positivity and empowerment here on our fun entertainment lifestyle talk show series, where we're bringing back the lost art of conversation. So we figured who better than having America's Queen of Inspiration, Ambassador Sujay, joining us here on the show. She is in New York, where she's, of course, from, but she takes the train back and forth quite often to DC to do her work in Washington. And it's amazing. And literally, again, I'd say 5 minutes ago, she made a mad dash from that Amtrak train right to her location, got all set up, jumped in the chair, put the computer on, and here she is. And that is what you call a go-getter. Lots of inspiration needed to be able to pull that off. She's absolutely amazing. And again, she's joining us live and direct from New York City. What did two U.S. presidents, Coretta Scott King, the New York Police Department, and the first female president in Africa have in common? All have ties to our special guest, Reverend Dr. Susan D. Johnson Cook, a.k.a. Ambassador Sujay, known as America's Queen of Inspiration. She holds a Doctor of Ministry degree from the United Theological Seminary, further amplifying her portfolio and inspiration. And her goal has always been to bring the voices of strong women from around the globe to speak candidly about family, food, and faith. And we talk a lot about that on this series too. Ambassador Sujay's career is just as inspiring as the careers of the guests on, the shows. Her resume includes advising President Bill Clinton as a White House fellow on the Domestic Policy Council and working with the Secretary of Department of Housing and Urban Development on faith-based issues. She was the first female and African American to hold the position of U.S. Ambassador for International Religious Freedom. She was the first female New York City Police Department chaplain for 21 years. In demand as a motivational and keynote speaker, she has given more than 3,000 speeches. A civil, gender, and human rights activist, she officiated the funeral services for her mentor, godmother, civil rights legend, Coretta Scott King. She has also written 13 books. And before Ambassador Sujay was confirmed as President Barack Obama's U.S. Ambassador for International Religious Freedom, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton nominated her for the position. She endured a nearly 2-year political battle that tested the Baptist Bronx minister's resilience and stamina, the grace, strength, and poise with which she handled the challenge, and inspired legions and further enhanced her legacy as the Queen of Inspiration. Once on the job, Ambassador Sujay had the pleasure of meeting and working with other inspirational women through the goodwill travels to 199 countries. The series gives her the opportunity to do what she became, and that is, of course, an ambassador, shining a spotlight on accomplished global women and their stories of faith, family, and the food that brings communities together. She's the author of 2 fabulous books, My Fabulous Fifth Chapter, It's My Turn Now, and Rhythm of the Rest. Really an honor and a pleasure to have her here on the Jim Masters Show Live, coming to us again, direct, all dusted off from the train, direct from New York City. Let's welcome her to the show. Welcome, Ambassador. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here.
It's great to be here. You said go getter. I think I really understand what mover and shaker means. You move and then you have the shakes from moving so much. So, I'm trying to just calm it down, but I'm loving being with you today, and thank you for having me.
Oh, the honor is mine. So you literally just got off the train from your work in Washington, D.C., straight up to New York. And how often do you end up having to do that?
Well, I say frequently. Today it was the reverse. It was actually New York to Washington. I host a group of Black women in ministry. We got a Lilly Endowment grant for $1 million. And it's the first generation of Black women in ministry who are senior pastors now actually mentoring Black women who are new voices in ministry. And so we are doing a retreat this week in the nation's capital, so we can not only see that it is our capital, but begin to learn how it functions and flows. And so it's going to be a wonderful time. Since COVID, this is our first time in the real space, in person space. We've been virtual for a year and a half. And so we're just looking forward to the energy and the synergy that will happen. And most of all, that we have faith and we also have fun.
Which is absolutely a beautiful way to look at it. Family, faith, fun, food. It's a beautiful combination.
Oh yeah, definitely. And to be fine, fit, and fabulous. So all the F's right there come together. And I just believe, that I say that the rest of your life may be the best and most blessed of your life. So that people don't see a certain number and say it's time for me to give up, quit. No, I'm like, we've only just begun to live. I think the Carpenters had a song about that. We've only just begun to live. And
Yes.
I think we have to really look at that. Like, a pandemic can slow you down, but it doesn't shut you down. And so, what do you do with this time that we've had? You can recalibrate, some call it pivot, but it's just about what are you going to do on the other side of this? And I think we've had the time to really do that, to reflect and to re envision and to reimagine things. And so, it's a really great time to be alive. And so, we just must continue to enjoy that piece of our lives, that is time.
Beautifully said, and I concur 100%. We talk about that a lot on the show. I've been saying I hope we rise from the ashes of all of this more loving, kinder, empathetic, unified, not divisive, and we are all at the table. And we really appreciate how short and precious life really is. And take time. We're always chasing,
Right.
the golden baton, but take time as we've had all this time to stop, smell the coffee, breathe, take time, and then continue, reboot and refresh. We all need to do that, right?
And appreciate some of the things that we've done. Sometimes had been moving so fast. There were people who didn't even know if they had eaten dinner. They were like, I gobbled something down, but was that my dinner? We were moving so fast. And from a city like New York, I'm from Harlem, it's a fast city. So New York, they're so fast they named it twice. And so you have to really just breathe. And what COVID did was not just allow us time to pause and reboot, but nobody could be any faster than the other person. So it was the great equalizer. And I think when we come out of this, it's not as competitors, but how can we be collaborative? How can we be concise? How can we close some things down that really don't need to be on our plate anymore and be concise? And so I think it's a time for rebooting, as you said, but also how do we go forward, reimagining what life is going to be like? I was on the Hampton Jitney, you from Long Island. So it's the bus that takes you from Eastern Long Island into the city. And I was with a guy who just got hired a year and a half ago and has not even been into his office because he was hired remotely. And they've been in a virtual situation for a year and a half. And I think what we're going to see is that more businesses like his are not even going to buy office space. They're like, why? We're really getting as much production done with us being at home or being in our remote places than we did actually in this space. And so we're going to see a whole lot of things changing for the good. And that's okay. Change and transformation is really okay. Transition is okay. And to not negate it, but actually flow with it, which brings me to rhythms of rest. It's 40 devotions for women on the move, women who came to one of my retreats called Selah by the Sea. And Selah, the word Selah, Selah, in the Hebrew, Judaic, and Christian Bible, basic, and happy Hanukkah to my Jewish friends, but it means to pause, to reflect, to not move so fast. So David was a psalmist, he was a harpist, and he would play for the king, he would sing and write songs for the king. But Selah meant just pause. And let's reflect on the music that was just played. And I think that's what this pandemic did. Pause. Let's reflect on the life we've just lived. If you're still here, that's a good thing. And so, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Whatever happened before is behind us, but there's now and there is the future. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I'm saying, may the rest of your life be the best and the most blessed of your life.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. You know, you're considered America's queen of inspiration, but you've also had so many people that you had an opportunity to work with, work for, collaborate with commiserate with, dine with, who have inspired you? Tell us early on in your life's journey, Ambassador, who are some of those folks, maybe even within your own family growing up in New York, that first inspired you to want to do the work you do?
It starts with my family. My parents, the late Dorothy and Wilbert Johnson, were sharecroppers in this generation. They came from the deep South, poverty. When they say dirt poor, that means they worked in the dirt and they were poor. But they came to New York and they both met on their first day in New York City. And they had a dream. They formed a partnership. So they were civil servants by day, a school teacher, my mom. My dad worked for the Mass Transit Authority before it was even MTA. They were trolley car drivers back
You're
then.
right.
And at night, they built this business, a watch guard security guard agency, and they were Christians. And so the church was an integral part of our family and upbringing. It was there where we sat with the first Black judges, the first Black lawyers. And as we were there, we were in a village of inspiration. So even as a young child, they would say, "So where are you going to college?" I was like, "I'm just learning to read
Well,
Dr. Seuss, you know?"
yeah.
They would say, "But where are you going to college?" And so they were pouring into me encouragement and vision that failure was not an option because too many people paid too many dues for us to get where we were. And so we looked forward to that community. We partied together. People would come to my mother's house and my mother and father's house after church and sit around my mother's table. She was a great cook. And so we would have conversations that were not about talking about people, but that were talking about conversations like this that were uplifting and would deal with the issues at hand. And then we'd play cards and we would sing, we would dance. And so people would stay to the wee hours of the next morning. So it'd be Monday morning. I'm like, "Don't y'all have to go to work?" But in that room were some of the movers and shakers. So people like Senator Charles Schumer, who's now the number one senator on the planet, was an assemblyman with my brother. And so I met them at their young stages. Mayor Dave Dinkins, the first African American mayor, when he was city clerk, was in my mother's house and living room. And so I grew up with these people who had aspirations, who had vision, and who took the time to sit with us. So my first summer jobs, my first summer internships were all with these wonderful people who were like, "You can do it. What time are you showing up for work?" And so I was on time. We were clean cut. And we wanted to make our parents proud. We wanted to make our village proud. We wanted everyone to know that we appreciated who we were, whose we were, and the opportunities we had. And so my parents were the first inspiration. The people who were in their living room, who they surrounded me with, Black, Jewish, Asian, Latino, Native Americans, were all in my mother's living room. And so we grew up. I lived in a high-rise apartment near Yankee Stadium. And it's still there, Executive Towers. And on my floor, there were 17 different apartments. We had 11 different nationalities in those apartments. So we grew up as friends and neighbors and playmates. When one person moved in, everybody would come and bring your children, your parents, your grandparents, and it was really a village. And so we met these exciting nationalities. So we really didn't know, we didn't call it diversity and inclusion. We called it my playmates. And so it was a wonderful upbringing. So my heroes and my sheroes are people who just worked hard, did well, brought food home to their families, encouraged us to go out and get our own food and learn how to fish. They wouldn't fish for us, but they taught us how to fish. And then we would celebrate all of the wins and we would share together the losses until we were all able to stand on our feet. Those are the people, the everyday people, many whose names you'll never know, but who inspired me and said, "Girl, you got what it takes. Keep on going. You're a go-getter. You're a mover and a shaker. We're counting on you." And guess what? Some of them are still there, but most of them have gone on. But their legacy lives within me. And I am so fortunate to have had them in my life. So I can't hear you, Jim. I don't know if you can hear me. Your mic is muted. Okay, there you
Yeah,
are.
that's great sources of inspiration early on like that, which I think is absolutely spectacular. So, living in a high rise across from Yankee Stadium, were you able to catch any foul balls?
Well, you know what? When the building was first built in the old Yankee Stadium, we were on the 20th floor, apartment 20C, and we could actually look into the field.
See the
And
game.
so the New York Giants also used to play on that
That's
field.
right.
And some of them lived in my building. So I was the only teenager for a long time. So I was the babysitter for a lot of the New York Giants. I remember Spider Lockhart, and his kid was Carly. And so I was the babysitter for him. There was a model, Jane Davenport. I was the babysitter for her daughter. And so these were the up and coming, new people, the newbies in sports and modeling and science and business. And so I got to go into their homes. They entrusted me with their children. They would just give me the key and say, they need to be to bed at this time. But it was no distrust, and I was not going to dishonor them because they were giving me this opportunity, and they knew my parents. I mean, that's the other thing about growing up. We knew everybody's parents, so you couldn't mess up because any parent could discipline you. Any parent was going to call your parent, and so you didn't want to mess up because it was the whole village that that you misrepresented or that you really disappointed. And so it was so great. So there was this one doorman in my building, Carlos, who was there for like several of my seasons. So I moved in the building when I was 13. So I was one of the few teenagers in the building. It used to be an old Jewish building until a lot of the Jewish population moved up to Co-op City or moved south to Florida. And so when I came in, Carlos, we used to have to buzz up on the intercom to let people know people were coming up. So Carlos saw me at 13 and 15 and 16 when I had curfews with the high schoolers. I would say, Carlos, buzz upstairs. He saw me when I got married, on the day I got married. He's like, oh, Miss J, this is your day. He saw me when I gave birth to my kids. My water broke. And he's like, is this the moment? And so he saw me from 13 to 33. And it was just so wonderful to have that kind of community cheering you on and saying, I'm ready. I'm going into that birthing room with you. We're going. And that's the kind of community I grew up with. So it's been fantastic.
That is incredible. That is absolutely incredible. So what was one of the first opportunities for you to do the beautiful and impactful work that you do? I mean, Reverend, Doctor, Ambassador, all these different hats, all these wonderful ways to connect with people. What was one of those first opportunities for you that really got the ball rolling for you, Ambassador?
Thank you for that question. So I met at age 13. My parents were Southerners, as I shared. So they would send us, my brother and I, down to what they call down south every summer. Part of it was for us to learn our culture. We would stay with our maternal grandmother. And so all the first cousins would stay with my grandma. I realized we drove her crazy, but she handled it and she handled us. But it was also a chance for my parents to get a second job in the summer. They didn't want us to see that they were working around the clock. So they would send us south to safe hands, but it allowed them to work and get that extra job while they were building this company. And so those summers were just so, so special. And those summers really undergirded me in terms of learning my culture, understanding the importance of seeing poverty, because many of my relatives were still in the South and not making it. But it also allowed me to appreciate the Northern exposure and to have both worlds. Those worlds were the ones that undergirded me, that really sustained me. And those were the lessons that I learned. Those lessons playing in the fields with my cousins, where there were no cell phones. We had a black and white TV, 9-inch with an antenna that we used to put aluminum foil on.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
To get the signal.
Yeah.
But those were some of the best days because we didn't have anything in terms of material, but we had everything in terms of love and honesty and courage and integrity. And, you just knew to do right, to walk right, to live right. So those were my early days. And then coming up, as I became an adult and went to college, so all of those persons who would come in my grandmother's living room, when I was 13, I met my first female minister, and I knew something was happening within me. Her name was Katie Cannon. She's not here any longer, but it was something about her that said that I could also do that. And so we call it a calling in the Christian faith. And so when I went to college, I went to this tremendous church in college in Boston, St. Paul AME Church in Cambridge. And in this church were all these intelligent, articulate, wonderful. There were scientists from MIT and all of these wonderful people who were able to, we were able to affirm our faith and also be intellectually good, but also we were able to bring whatever our talents were. So I remember the late Ron McNair, who died in the Challenger Space Challenge. He was a karate specialist. And so he taught us karate moves. I was into drama. We could do our plays. Another woman was into dance. We could do all of that. And then we were also stimulated to get good grades. Like, again, failure was not an option. So here I was in a place where my faith could be affirmed, my culture could be affirmed, and my talent could be affirmed. And I knew again that my calling was kind of happening. But I went into a television career as a TV producer. WJLA TV, the ABC affiliate, hired me over the phone, and I was able to be a TV producer. So I was doing production by day, going to seminary at Howard Seminary by night. And, you know, both of them demanded a lot of attention. But I stayed in production for 5 years. And it was right when Good Morning America and 60 Minutes was starting to be formed, and they were looking for producers. And I interviewed with both of them. And then I had to make a choice, kind of like, what did I feel was my real purpose in life? And so I went into the ministry, and I became the first Black woman in the American Baptist churches worldwide to be elected as a senior pastor. And my church was down in Wall Street area. And so in New York, you know, the East and West comes to this point. And so you have City Hall, you have the police headquarters, you have corporate America, Wall Street, and all of these people would come to my church at lunchtime. And so the women said, why don't we go back to Commissioner Ben Ward and tell him this is our Wednesday pastor, let's make her a police chaplain. I had no idea there were chaplains for City of New York, but I did become the first female chaplain. And that, of course, catapulted me into all kinds of things, because we come in as an inspector, which means you're a VIP in New York. You run with the mayor, you run with police commissioners, and I stayed there 21 years. It was in 93, 94, I applied to be a White House fellow under President Clinton. It's a long application process. 2,000 people apply, they choose 14. And if you're selected, you're guaranteed to work with the president, vice president, or one of the cabinet secretaries. It's a wonderful program started by Lyndon Johnson, President Lyndon, and it's still going strong, some 60 some years. So I encourage young leaders, I would say between 25 and 35, to apply for it, because it's nonpartisan and it's there for you to work in government at the executive level. We got a salary.
That's
and it was
incredible.
going in as President Clinton's domestic policy analyst. He was also into the church world. He really loved the Black church. And so my second week on the job, he's like, you're the Baptist preacher from the Bronx. And I was like, yes, sir. And, you know, you have a president come behind you and talk to you. You're like, oh, my gosh. And he's like, I need you to represent me at this conference next week. And from there, he just really zeroed in on everything I was doing and allowed me to be part of the inner circle. And my world blew up. He introduced me to political life. I sat in with the cabinet secretaries. So listen to this. So I worked for Police Commissioner Ben Ward, and then also Commissioner Lee P. Brown was the one who swore me in. Well, he became the first drug czar under President Clinton. So the year I went in as White House fellow, he's coming in as drug czar. So we end up in this cabinet meeting, and he comes and gives me this hug. And President Clinton's like, you know her? And he's like, yeah, she worked for me. And so I had this immediate connection. And I went to almost every cabinet meeting from that point forward, which again, you're sitting with the decision makers who are surrounding the president of the United States, and you are one of those called in to be a decision maker on policy with the president of the United States. That changed my life. And then President and Mrs. Clinton at the time moved to New York. She became Senator Clinton. She ran for office. And then when she was Secretary, Clinton remembered me from 93, 94 and nominated me to be U.S. Ambassador for International Religious Freedom. So I had a pastoral life. I had a White House Fellows life. I had a stint at Harvard because of what I did at the White House Fellows. And then I had a stint with cabinet secretaries because of what I did with President Clinton. And all of it kind of just morphed from there. And so what I say to people is, number one, take the risk and apply for things like the White House Fellows. I failed twice, under Reagan and under Daddy Bush. People won't tell you that they failed their way to success. So this was really my third attempt. And so take the risk, have the courage. If you feel you're suited for a particular thing, go for it. You may not get it the first round, but go for it. The other lesson is relationships are important. And, I didn't just quit when I left in 93, 94. I stayed in touch with President Clinton. They created something else for me. Secretary Cisneros created something else for me. And so you have to be in the room. You have to be the smartest one in the room. So when they call on you, have something to say. Don't be like, duh, I don't know something to say. Even if it's just a small observation, sir, when I was listening to you, I thought of this. And they're like, that's a great idea. Or they'll say, well, we may come back to that, but at least they know you're in the room.
That you're there.
And the third lesson is what you're doing. If you have a platform, whatever it is, use that for impact and influence to spread the word, to have people on that others may not know about, but you're using your platform in a major way. Whatever platform, use it, because it honors you, but it also brings others to the table. And so those are my lessons in terms of how my life has unfolded, but relationships matter.
They really, really do. I agree 110% on that.
Yeah.
What are there a couple of things in your role as ambassador, projects, events, scenarios that you've worked on that really stand out to you the most?
Oh, wow. So I was U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom. So many people get one country and they're called chiefs of mission. So they're like the ambassador to the Bahamas or the ambassador to whatever. So I had 199 countries in my portfolio. Religious freedom is like one of the most contested areas of life because you're really going to religious war zones. My job and my assignment was to go to these countries, what they call countries of particular concern, where they're not really allowing people to do what they want to do in terms of worship, and their citizens are really oppressed when it comes to that, maybe persecuted or maybe even killed. So I would go to those zones, and my job was to bring a message to them from the president and secretary of state, but also bring a message back from them to the president and secretary of state. So I was at the diplomatic table, and to be at that table, usually the only woman, and certainly the only African American at the table. And so when you're in these places, again, you can't say, oh, wow, I'm here. You have to act like you're supposed to be at that table. And the State Department and the White House spends a lot of time preparing you for that mission, wherever it is, whatever you're supposed to do, so that you are clear. So yes, I'm a minister, but it wasn't my Baptist ministry that sent me into this position. So it wasn't to go around the world and say, hey, I'm a Baptist preacher, let me in. It was, I'm a diplomat for the United States of America. Let me in because I represent the president and I represent the secretary, and I bring a message from them to you, and they expect a message from you back to them. And so once you learn that and you're prepared and you have preparation and presentation, you have to have your diction together. You have to have what I call it, your look, your book, and your hook. You have to know what to say, how to say it, when to speak, when not to speak, how to sit at the table. Because when you arrive in every country, there's always an ambassador's dinner your first night to honor you. So you are sitting between some of the highest powered people in that country. Well, you need to know how to act, not say, I don't eat this, or, oh my gosh, I've never eaten this. It is to be able to have a conversation and to also be able to really have an evening that's pleasurable. And as I flash back, when I was preparing for the White House Fellowship, they put you in situations where if you had to represent the president of the United States, and one of those is a dinner, not knowing that I'd be at a diplomatic dinner in my honor. And they want to see if you know how to eat without spitting on the next person, if you know which fork and knife to use. And
All the things that mom and dad taught us as kids.
all the things. And when you think about it, like, yeah, life prepared me for this moment. There were no surprises. Life did prepare me for these moments.
They sure did. Absolutely. You've been described as Oprah Winfrey and Billy Graham rolled into one.
Yeah, New York Times said that. So there's the faith side of me, and most of what I do outside of government is faith-based. My writings are faith-based. A lot of my talks are faith-based. And I lead a faith-based group, as I shared at the opening, this Lilly Endowment Project. But I also am an Oprah. I have conversations on YouTube. I had a couple on TV, as you do. And I am one who hosts conversations with intriguing, interesting international people, inspirational people, intergenerational people, so that we can have conversations around the globe. And so I'm hoping to do some things with you, Mr. Masters, one of these days when we're off the air. But it's about, again, your preparation and your presentation. Are you interesting or are you a dud? And so I'm like, I don't want to be in the dud category, so I'll be in the interesting category.
Yes, you are. And lots of passion and vim and vigor and fire. And I love the enthusiasm. Also a civil, gender, human rights activist, which I mentioned, you officiated the funeral services for your mentor and godmother, civil rights legend Coretta Scott King. Tell us about this beautiful relationship with the one and only Coretta Scott King.
Well, her oldest daughter, Yolanda, the late Yolanda King, and I were like 6 months apart in terms of age. And so we were best friends. We were best friends. And we met in college. And she always had the desire to go to Africa. I had just lived in Africa the summer before with a program called Operation Crossroads Africa. Very similar to it was a precursor to the Peace Corps, but where college students actually go when you live with the indigenous people. So I'm like, oh, I can take you through Africa. We backpacked through 9 countries. And so she's like, you have to convince mother, that I can go. And so I had to go to Mrs. King, who's just meeting me, and say, I've got your daughter. And we're going to do this backpack through 9 countries. And trust me, we're going to make it. So she lets her go. Now I'm like, OMG, I've got Martin Luther King's daughter. And we ended up being just sisters. 9 weeks, 9 countries, backpacking through all kinds of treacherous and all kinds of terrain. And we ended up she was a night person, so she could stay up all night. I'm a day person. I cannot stay. I was at 10 o'clock, like on the dot, and still am, because I'm an early riser. And so we had these opposite kind of poles in terms of our nightlife and day life, but we'd meet right in the middle of the day. And we found out that if we could do it from 11 a.m. to about 5 p.m., then we would be okay. And we just became friends. And because of that, we were in each other's households, our mothers met, and all of those things that just human young adults do from the age of, we met about 19 all the way up to when she passed at 51. We were girlfriends, we giggled, we did all of the things. And because we both were public figures, I mean, certainly she more than I, but we knew how to protect one another in terms of, like, that's not one you want to go out with. Let me interview him first. Let me see why she's coming at you. Don't give them your room number. We're going to make sure that they don't know where you are. And so we ended up having this wonderful, wonderful relationship. And so 3 weeks before she passed was my 50th birthday. I had just gone to her party, like I said, 6 months before. And it was a year, we both were public speakers. And it was a year that we were on the same stage in the same hotel for like 6 months. It was almost as though the heavenlies were giving us time to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And so we giggled, we're stuffing our face because both of us always had weight issues. And we're stuffing our face after coming from this juicing vacation. She gave me a juicing vacation for my birthday. And I was like, I want a McDonald's burger.
Yeah, juicing.
I'm like, I can't do this. They were like, we're gonna take a trip today. I was like, is it for French fries? You know. And so we're stuffing our face with Doritos and like saying we're gonna lose the weight after this. And then 3 weeks later she passes. So
Mm,
it was devastating. But because of her, our mothers were close. And then when my mother passed, Mrs. King said, "You're my other daughter." And she said it publicly all the way till the day she died. She was like, I want my daughter to come visit me in the hospital. And so it was one of those special relationships where I not only walked and talked with kings, but I walked and talked with a queen.
you sure did. Wow, that's a beautiful story. Got some really couple of photos here we dug up.
Oh,
Not great?
that's my first trip with Secretary Clinton. We went to oh God, Istanbul. That was in Istanbul.
Wow.
Yes, yes.
Wow. Gee,
That was my first week on the job.
isn't that incredible?
Yes, and that's my being sworn in. My two sons there by Secretary Clinton, and my village of Sag Harbor. I tell you, no joke. They came by train, by boat, by bus. They said it was the most colorful swearing in they ever had. They packed. You're supposed to have like 300 people. There were 530 people. They were like, "We're not going home." So somebody better figure out how we're gonna get in here. And it was just so wonderful to have my village of Sag Harbor there.
Oh boy. And also, of course, President Obama and working with him, part of his
Yeah.
team.
Oh
That
yeah.
quite amazing as well, huh?
Very much so. It was very much, I talked about, wanting to do a good job for our parents because we wanted to make them proud. As the first African American president, I wanted to make him proud. I wanted to make sure he didn't have to worry about this area of his administration. So that every day I went to work, whether it was abroad or in Washington, it was like, I've got to do a good job. I have to represent, and I have to represent this president. And so he made us proud, and I wanted to make him proud.
And absolutely. I mean, and the things that you witnessed and you saw and that you were a part of, extraordinary, real history, right? In the making.
In the making. I mean, from the first and second inauguration. The first I went in, like everyone else, waiting for hours. The second, I was part of his team. So how amazing was that? This is in Los Angeles, speaking at Pastor Mary Minor, who's in the white robe at her church in Los Angeles, shortly after coming out of the administration.
Mm,
You got some
incredible.
really good shots.
Yeah, I do my research. Yeah, I got my
Good.
journalistic hat on. Yes, absolutely. And the books too. Now, when
Yeah,
you have an
we'll talk
opportunity.
about those. Yeah, before I leave, because I'm a mover and a shaker. So the two books, Rhythms of Rest, 40 Devotions for Women on the Move. It's available on Amazon.com. 40 women who came to my Selah by the Sea retreat. And we're having another one June 20th to the 23rd. If you're interested, send me an email, womenontheworldstage@gmail.com. That's all one word, womenontheworldstage@gmail.com. But they write from their heart. Many of them are first-time contributors. And we write about what it means to rest, how to get your rhythm, how to get your flow back. They said Stella got her groove back, but you got to get your rhythm back. And so that's what this book is about. And the second one is my fabulous fifth chapter. It's my turn now. So that was taken on my 50th birthday. And it's about women 50 plus, no matter what age, what stage you're at, no matter what your race or ethnicity. We've cared for loved ones. We've cared for children, for parents. Many times they called us the sandwich generation. But I'm a proud boomer. And so when do you get your shot? I say it's our turn now. 50. So that starts when you get your AARP card on that 50th birthday. I don't know how the U.S. Postal Service gets that day right. But then on the 6th month of your 64th birthday, which was this summer for me in July, you get a note saying your next birthday you apply for Medicare. Do you know how mind-blowing that is? You
That's
know,
an adjustment. Yeah.
right. I mean, I think I was just like 40 yesterday, and they're like,
Yes.
no, baby, you got a month to apply for Medicare. So, but it's like how do you still have fun and keep your faith and be fine, fit, and fabulous? So you can call me Dr. Fabulous or the Queen of Inspiration, but I'm here to have the best of the rest of my life. And it's my honor to have been on your show. You're amazing. You're a master, Mr. Masters, at this conversation.
I really appreciate that. I love this shot. This is the Reverend Doctor and Ambassador taking Washington, D.C. by storm. Here I am.
Yes, yes,
I'm
that's right on the DC Wharf during cherry blossom season, and that I loved actually living there, right down the block from the cherry blossoms, and that's me. I'm like, I'm here.
What are some of those blessings and joys in your life, Ambassador, that continue to spur you on to do this extraordinary and beautiful and impactful legacy building work that you do for the good of all of us through your faith-based work as a reverend and doctor, as an ambassador representing our country in the beautiful way that you do and helping people along the way?
Well, what inspires me is motherhood. We talked about my passion for women, but I have two sons. And so I have passion also for men. And particularly what interests me now is men and mental health, because so many are, as Brian Stevenson taught us, those are my two guys. The oldest one right next to me is Samuel. He's a resident in internal medicine. And the youngest one, Chris, to the right, is an entrepreneur, a fourth generation entrepreneur. And that they are my motivation. I love them and they keep me going. And so Brian Stevenson's movie Just Mercy talked a lot about Black men in incarceration. And that's one of the issues I'm going to talk about, because there's so much undetected or misdiagnosed mental illness. And for many Black men, it doesn't get detected until later in their 20s. So they could go straight through their teens, their young adult years, and then they're 29, 30, and you're like, oh my gosh. And so many of our many communities of color have not dealt with it because, number one, there's this like shame because you can't see it, but it's very much real. And so I think for this next part of my life, that's going to be something that's going to spur me on. But I'm inspired by the people I work with every day that I serve, these women who are up and budding women. Sometimes I see a little piece of myself in each of them, where they're aspiring and they have these ideas and they want to get on 4 trains in 1 week. I have it down to 1 train. I'm like, I can't go that fast anymore. But I see them and I see promise and I see potential and I see them wanting to grow. And so that keeps me inspired. So those are some of the little things, but family still, family, faith, having fun, and leaving a legacy so that another generation funds funds. So that another generation doesn't have to start out as my parents did in the fields as sharecroppers, but they can build on the wealth and the wellness that I've tried to leave for my people.
That's amazing. That is really beautiful. Anything coming up that you're very excited about?
Well, we're preparing for the Selah by the Sea in June 20th to the 23rd. Again, they can send me an email to womenontheworldstage@gmail, or you can go to my website, drsujay.live. And I spell Sujay, Sujay, drsujay.live, and begin to just see things that are up and coming. But that's the big thing we're planning for. We take 50 to 100 women from around the world for 4 days of learning how to have life balance. Like, we know how to pray hard, but my thing is, do you know how to play hard?
Right.
And so shorts and sneakers and bathing suits are welcome. It's not a fashionista time where you show us your best clothes. It's basically, can you show us your best moves on the dance floor? Can you show
Right.
us your best moves in the pool? And so that's really coming up, and we're planning for that.
What are a couple things before we go that you've learned about yourself through all of this work that you've done and through this time that we've experienced the last 2 years or so during COVID and all?
That I've got brilliance and resilience.
I
That
like that.
that I'm the comeback kid. Unapologetically brilliant, unapologetically resilient, and that I am a strong woman who's trying to help other people to not lose their strength, but to garner it, to gain it, to stand up, to be the people they were created to be. So that's who I am. So if you describe that as Oprah and Billy Graham, that's great. I want to have some of the wealth Oprah has, but I want to also have the spiritual wealth Billy Graham has, so that you don't flounder, you don't fall apart in the midst of things that are troubling. And this has been a troubling time for many. There have been many losses, um, in terms of people, in terms of businesses, in terms of a lot of things. And so, how do you take that time and learn lessons and not focus on your losses? That's what I'd like to do. That's how I'd like to be remembered.
Take those lemons, turn them into lemonade. The positive way of thinking is so important. And
Yeah.
that's why they call you America's Queen of Inspiration. You sure are.
Thank you. And you are the king of inspiration. Thank you for having me so much, Jim Masters.
You are very welcome, Ambassador. The books, where can people find these two books?
So Rhythms of Rest and My Fabulous Fifth Chapter are both on Amazon.com. In addition to Amazon.com, Rhythms of Rest can be at OurDailyBread.org, and My Fabulous Fifth Chapter can also be found at JudsonPress.com, which was my first publisher, and now they're my 17th publisher. So I want to thank them and Our Daily Bread for giving me a shot.
Well, we've certainly had our daily bread and our daily dose of inspiration today with you, Ambassador Sujay. Thanks so much for joining us. An
Thank you
honor
for
and a
having
pleasure. We will keep the porch light on for you. You're welcome back anytime. Spread the word about our series. We would
me.
absolutely
Yes,
love that. And I hope the show met whatever expectations you had and you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you.
it exceeded my expectations. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. And one last person here that wanted to say you knocked it out of the park, Mr. George Burns with us today.
Thank you, George. And you've been knocking it out the park for how many decades? It's been your
Yes,
fabulous eighth chapter.
that's right. And he played God too. So you got
Yeah.
God on your side.
Hey, I love it. I love it. Take care of yourself.
You be well. And now go have dinner. You've earned it.
Thank you. And I'm good and hungry. I'm gonna have a ribeye tonight. I'm not gonna be
Oh,
a vegan. I'm gonna be a carnivore tonight.
well,
So
you
for
come
all who,
back. I
yes.
mentioned in the beginning, faith, family, food. We didn't talk about the food part. This is a foodie crowd. So we'll
Oh,
talk about food when you come back next.
okay. I love it all. I didn't get this size just eating tofu. So hey,
Well,
take care.
but blessings of the holidays as well, and
You
we'll
too.
chat again
Thank you.
soon. All
And to
right.
my Jewish friends, happy Hanukkah. To
Happy
my Christian
Hanukkah.
friends, Merry Christmas.
Yes, absolutely. And a blessed new year for 2022 for us
Yes.
all. Take
Thank you.
care, Ambassador. Thanks for all the time.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye now. Reverend Dr. Susan D. Johnston Cook, Ambassador Sujay, joining us here. Really extraordinary, an amazing person. Such a brilliant intellectual, yes, but also somebody who is authentic and real, organic, approachable, affable, and somebody from her early days growing up in New York City in that high rise that faced Yankee Stadium. She was inspired early and she has lived the life of passionate inspiration and empowerment through her work as a chaplain for the New York City Police Department, as ambassador for Hillary Clinton, as well as Barack Obama, and just really amazing, amazing woman, right? Wouldn't you say? Really an honor to have her here on the show. We really enjoyed the conversation. She literally just got off a train, Amtrak train. She goes between New York and Washington, D.C., and literally just got off the train so she can be with us here on the Jim Masters Show live and grace our presence with her wit and wisdom and her beautiful way. And really an honor to have Ambassador Sujay with us here on the show. At first, you probably thought, that's a made up name, right? Ambassador Sujay. She actually is an ambassador. And as I mentioned, her career is just as inspiring as the careers, of so many people that we talk about here on the show. She advised President Bill Clinton as White House Fellow on the Domestic Policy Council and worked with the Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development on faith-based issues. She was the first female African American to hold a position of U.S. Ambassador for International Religious Freedom, which we talked about. The first female New York City Police Department chaplain for 21 years. 3,000 speeches and counting as a keynote speaker, and a civil, gender, human rights activist. She's officiated the funeral services for her mentor and godmother and civil rights legend, Coretta Scott King. She's written 13 books. And as I mentioned, the newest are the two that we talked about, which you can get at Amazon as well. And My Fabulous Fifth Chapter and Rhythms of Rest. Really incredible stuff. My Fabulous Fifth Chapter, it's my turn now. That's where Ambassador Sujay explains that there are 5 chapters in life from birth throughout the childhood years is chapter 1. Then come the formative teenage years, chapter 2. As you mature into chapter 3, you're entering young adult years. And then before you know it, you're in chapter 4, your adult years, and so much more. I don't want to give it all away, but it's really cool stuff. And I think you'll enjoy her material and her take on life. Really an honor to have her here on the show, and a pleasure to have all of you here as well. Thanks for being with us, everybody. We loved having you here. Austin Fields says another great show. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. For those watching live, we'll be back at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We have a television icon now joining us in just a few hours. Again, for those watching live, those not watching this live, you're watching it later, then you can watch this episode right away. TV icon Ernie Douglas from My Three Sons. He also has been in Mad Men, Notorious Nick, and so much more. Barry Livingston, also the brother of Stanley Livingston, who played Chip Douglas on My Three Sons, that iconic CBS television series in the 1960s. Yeah, live and direct from Hollywood. Barry Livingston is with us coming up at 8 p.m. tonight here on the Jim Masters Show live. Good to have everybody here. We thank you for joining us as well. We will see you guys then. Always a pleasure to have you here. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up. We would love that. The YouTube channel is the one you're watching right now. That's Jim Masters TV. Click the notification bell so you never miss any of our incredible episodes. And also, give us a thumbs up like if you enjoyed this episode and any of the episodes that you enjoy on our wonderful series we have here. That's called the Jim Masters Show Live. And it's time for dinner for us as well. All right, gang, thanks for being with us. We love you all. Don't forget to leave a comment on our YouTube channel as well. We wish you the best. We'll see you on the next episode of the Jim Masters Show Live. Cheers.